Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's Scott Dillon here from the North American SAP Cloud Platform Center of Excellence. And today, I don't know, I think it's our 13th or 14th session here in the garage where we do monthly enablement for anyone that wants to kind of join on as SAP employees, partners. Of course, the event is really targeted towards customers. They get a feeling for what's going on inside of SAP Cloud Platform, all the things that are new. And today we're going to be doing a session that's more or less, I would say, an extension to or a follow-on to an event that we did about 2 months ago when we did enterprise messaging. And one of the same speakers joins me again today. Karsten, you have joined us. And what do you do for SAP, Karsten?
Well, thanks for having me, Scott. I am actually a product manager and evangelist for SAP Cloud Platform in Waldorf, Germany. I've been with the company for 20 years, and it has always been new topics. And again, this is once again the forefront right there with event-driven architectures.
Yeah, this is a really, for me personally, it's a really intriguing area. And then, of course, in the Q&A, because you and I will be doing a lot of talking, we try to bring in someone else. And Tobias, if you want to say hi, just 2 seconds. What do you do?
Hi, everyone. Looking forward to all of your questions, and I will answer them hopefully in the chat.
Excellent. Thanks, Tobias. And of course, Tobias works in the same area, very much a hands-on guy, knows the solutions very, very well. So, feel free to throw your tougher questions at him. He enjoys that. And so we basically today's going to be a little bit less hands-on than some of the other sessions that we've done, because we have quite a bit of setup to do to let people know what's involved in event enabling S4, which is one of the things I want to show and ensure that people understand by the time they leave the session. And if we have time provided, I want to show you another small example for using enterprise messaging and functions with a non-SAP app that I kind of put together just to show the concept. But without further ado, let's kind of get into some of the content here. Just so people know, we're doing this session today, of course, May 23rd, but we have ABAP in the cloud on June 18th. And then we'll have the Apple iOS SDK on July 24th. And then I have a whole bunch of ideas for August, September, October. We have functions. We have the CAP model. We have Fury elements. We got a bunch of things being thrown around. So we'll come back to you on these next few sessions in the next few weeks. But anyway, so everybody, thanks for joining. Let's get into it with our quick poll question. We always do one of these, kind of keep it a little bit interactive, just so we know if it's your first time here, not your first time here. All you got to do is hit yes or no and submit, and we'll wait 10 or 15 seconds. While we're doing that, I'll ask Karsten a really tough question. How long have you been playing in the enterprise messaging space, Karsten?
Wow, actually I was doing Gateway before, so that is kind of like in a synchronous way what we have started doing with the enterprise messaging and eventing space. So somehow I've been around probably for 6 years, and probably 2 of those focus on enterprise messaging and eventing. So somehow awesome. It starts with Gateway, and it's this continuous way of moving over because we did it in parallel as well.
Right. And I just, so I have a follow-on question to that, and then we have one other follow-on question here, just so we know, or we have an idea as we go through this presentation today. Are you considering the use of messaging and or event-driven architecture within your organization? Just a quick feedback on that, and I'll wait 15 seconds before we continue on. And so this is, and of course, I tell people all the time, Karsten, that I believe NetWeaver Gateway was one of the best things that SAP ever did to service enable their backend ECC systems. And I've been saying that now for probably 6-7 years, and I still say that all the time. Like, if you don't have NetWeaver Gateway, you have to put it in. Don't have that access to that digital core. Anyway, let's move on here. So we've got 66% of people saying they are considering the use of messaging and event-driven architecture. So no pressure, Karsten, but it's your job today, just you, not me, just your job to convince people that they need to use our enterprise messaging and event enablement with S4 in the organization, right? This is our goal. Yes, yay us. Okay, so without further ado, Karsten, I'm going to hand it over to you. You should be able to drive the slides at this point. Let's get at it, and I'll ask you some questions as we go.
Okay, then let's do that. I think in a way it's going to be very easy because the concept is very convincing and makes a lot of sense. In another way, it's going to be really challenging because it's a lot of things we need to introduce and a lot of new concepts that are popping up there. So it's a completely different world. The idea behind the session is to give you an overview what you need to do so that at some point in time you can get started yourself. Let's do a very quick recap at the first Cloud Platform Enterprise Messaging session we did a few months ago. The bottom line here is, and I will keep it short, enterprise messaging is SAP's messaging as a service. It allows for asynchronous communication, non-blocking. Remember, I did gateway before and said that this is synchronous. So you do a call, you wait. Asynchronous, the advantage simply is you shoot, your application can continue working, and then at some point in time, the result is going to come, basically. Enterprise messaging does support a number of standard protocols, MQTT, AMQP, which are big IoT protocols, REST right there. You will see those later today again in certain setups and use cases. We do support certain libraries, Java JMS, Node.js there, and a number of exchange patterns. The basic idea behind is that you can publish messages from the digital core, meaning S4, C4, and so on, to certain subscribers. Our main use case here would be cloud-native extension applications. If we go back to the last time and quickly look at what we had shown you there hands-on, we actually didn't use an S4 backend to produce events or send messages, and we didn't use a cloud platform on the client side to consume those messages. What we did is we used the Postman to start with to publish a message. We published that message to a topic. We did a queue subscription, meaning a topic can see like a radio. So the message is being broadcast. If you're online, you can listen to that message. If you're not, nobody's going to receive it. With this mixed setup, we're making sure that even if a consumer is not there, we're going to write this into the queue. And then in the next step, we developed a client app, a consumer app that consumed that message. Connection here from the Postman was using the REST messaging gateway. Here, it was using the AMQP protocol. In the next step, what we did, we developed a producer app. Both the consumer and the producer app were running locally on Scott's desktop right there. And there we published the messages using AMQP. So that was basically the setup last time. If you haven't done it, you can play around with all of that. And we use specifically these local apps to make it easier for you to immediately take the code, play around with it. Needless to say, you can do that on the cloud platform as well. And today, we're going to move further. We're going to continue on the outlook that we had been given. And the outlook had been on events, because this is what we really want to transport with the enterprise messaging from the digital core to subscribing apps and services on the cloud platform. So that's the idea. And with that, I would like to give...
Just going to hold on one second, Carsten. So if you just go back to that previous slide, so I'm just going to recap what I just heard you say. So a couple of key things for me that come across. One, this the difference between a topic and a queue. So when you have a producer application, which I want to make the point, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be SAP. It doesn't have to be SuccessFactors. It can be any application that can support one of those channels or protocols, right? So anything that can send a REST message can put a message into the messaging bus, number one. And then number two, the big difference between these topics and queues is that a topic is you take a message, you attach it or you label it with a topic, you put it into the messaging system, and then when a queue subscribes to the topic, I think a key thing that, for me anyway, is that it's persisted. It's persisted in the queue until someone takes it off, correct?
Yes, exactly. You can configure that in different ways. The bottom line is you are right. The queue holds that message, meaning I was trying to bring that across with the radio. If you don't have your radio switched on, you don't hear the news.
Right.
So the queue could help you there. If the news is put into the queue, you can see it like a mailbox. So you put a letter into your mailbox, and it's going to stay there until you take it out.
That's a perfect example,
difference.
right? Because I'll have people on my street that go to visit their community mailbox once a week. And as a result, when they open up, they're going to get 5 days worth of mail. Whereas me, I'm a little bit hyper. I go to the mailbox every day and I've got, I'm taking it out more frequently. And this is also very possible, right? So we can have, phone call. We have a situation where we could bring them out quickly, or we can leave them in there for a while. But the messages can be different, right? You could have 10 in one, 2 in another. So this is something that can be very valuable sometimes, depending on the consumer of the message, right?
Yes. And let's add one more thing here. You can have different setups here. You could immediately consume the topic, or you could just write into a queue without the topic, and so on. There are different setups possible here.
Right. Gotcha.
So
okay, that was good. Good clarification.
Good.
Thank you.
Perfect. If there's anything, Scott, like always, feel free to ask. I think that really did help a lot of people probably. So why are we doing that? Well, the idea is that if you look on the left-hand side, you can see an ERP system with a lot of customizations here. And it looks a little bit like patchwork. So in the end, it's a lot of effort to maintain that code. It's a lot of effort to operate things. And at some point in time, it's gonna become costly. And if you think about updates, there might be a major effort in that. So the idea on the right-hand side is that you move a lot, if not all of those extensions, of those customizations onto the cloud platform. So your digital core, your ERP system stays clean, and you have lower maintenance costs. It's decoupled. And on the right-hand side, you have all your extensions. There's another advantage. If you would use another backend system, you could immediately couple that with the cloud platform as well. Or in this system, it's typically extensions calling code in a certain language. Here, you could use different languages, like you could have one extension in Node, one in Java, and so on, depending on the skill set of your people. Now, the big question is, you have these extensions on the cloud platform. We call them side-by-side extensions. And you have your system. So how do you couple these systems? How do you couple the cloud platform with your backend? And the idea here is to do this in a loosely coupled way using eventing, using enterprise messaging there. So that's basically the motivation behind, to lower development costs, to lower maintenance costs. And if you have a bigger amount of systems connected to the cloud platform there, to scale in a better way as well.
Yeah, I will tell you, Carsten, having been across North America a few times now in the past 2 years in my current role, sometimes we have this expression, we have a solution looking for a problem. But in this particular case, I would say 50% of the customers I meet with, they all want to have suggestions or direction about how they can make an extension without affecting the back end. And so they're always wondering about what would be a suggestion from SAP and how they would do that. And I think this would be one technique that is very, very well suited for something like an extension to S4. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, that's the idea behind. So let me move on to the next slide. There's one important thing here. Let me just go through. It's the definition of an event. So we're talking about coupling these extensions to the S4 system. How do we do that? We do it in an event-driven approach. So we define an event as a significant change of state in an enterprise system. So you can picture there's a business partner, and that business partner, let's say, has a name. Let's call him Scott. So now, if we adjust the name to, let's say, Scott Dillon or something like that. Then there's a change, and this is going to raise an event. And that event will then be transported. So you can see that in the description down here. So from the backend system, there will be event notifications sent once there is this significant change of state in a business object, or let's say in a business process as well. You can define different points for an event to be thrown. Then you have, via enterprise messaging, extension applications that have subscribed to the event topic there. So an event is mapped to a topic. So you subscribe to the topic, and then you're then automatically informed of this business partner change. You will see that live in a few minutes. So I think it will be easy to understand once you see it. But basically, business object updated, business object changed, created, whatever, you can define those events. There will be an event transported with enterprise messaging to everybody that has subscribed to enterprise messaging there, and whoever has subscribed will be informed. And then, based on that event, you can act. Typically, we have a new concept named functions there to execute business logic. And I think in the next step, I think we need to define the function concept there, which again is definition first. Since 2012, there has been a new concept, popular. It was actually at some point in time really hyped in the IT community. It's called serverless. In the end, serverless is about simplifying things a lot. Basically, there are 6 criteria for defining serverless components. A database could, for example, be serverless as well. That means the servers are really hidden away from you, and they are operated by a cloud vendor, meaning you don't have to worry about the operation there at all. More so because there's automated scaling to that, so it does not matter to you at all whether you're going to write 1 record into a database or 5 million. That's not your problem. That's a problem of the cloud vendor. And there's linear scaling, so the scaling takes place in very small steps. The bottom line there really is you don't have to worry about things. The cloud vendor takes care of things. And there are 2 financial aspects here that are typically mentioned as well. That is pay-per-use and microbilling. So these 6 criteria basically define serverless. What is important to us here, that there is a certain compute service, namely functions as a service, that is run in a serverless environment. It means you can basically execute your code in a serverless environment without having to worry about anything. So you execute the code and the cloud provider takes care, which in that case would be SAP. 2 important things here. Those functions are stateless and they are ephemeral, meaning they don't hold a state and they disappear. The advantage there is if functions are executed, they consume memory and CPU time. If they are not executed, they sleep. So we're talking about atomic, stateless pieces of code that are executed on demand. And now comes the important point for us in response to triggers. So here you have the implementation that is executed, the code. And on the left-hand side, you can see the trigger. The trigger could, for example, be an HTTP call, or it could be a timer. Or, and that's the important thing, it could be an event. So there's an event coming from an S4 system, a business partner change, and it would start up a function. So functions are one means on our side for you to implement extensions on the cloud platform.
Okay, so hold on, Carsten. You sent so much stuff there, so I just want to recap a little bit. So going back, one more slide. I didn't want to stop you because you're on a roll and it'll all fit together, but it's important, I think, for myself just to recap a little bit, because we have this thing called the enterprise messaging service, and this is like foundational. And you spent a bit of time describing an event, and when you and I first started talking together, I'm like, well, really, enterprise messaging, I can put any message of any format onto the enterprise messaging service. And of course, I kind of think of it, as that sometimes you go to these restaurants with the spinning, the trays go round and round, and they put the bits of food on the conveyor belt, and you pick what you want. So I could put any kind of food on that conveyor belt, and it just goes around and around. And it's kind of like that with the messaging service. I can put whatever message I want, different formats, away you go. But the idea behind sticking to this event format is that it should be more consistent. So when it comes time to snap together two different endpoints, we have the same format. It should make that mapping or that integration a lot easier, right? So that's a couple of key points for me, as if I understood properly. And then, of course, functions, when you pair that with a queue, so now we have a topic for business partner as an example. So a new business partner is created, an event is triggered, we get it into the system with a topic, and then we grab it and we put it into a queue. And now we have these functions that can start up in the background, do some processing on the queue without affecting the initiating application. Is that accurate?
That sums it up very accurately.
Okay.
And actually, I like that conveyor belt. That was quite a nice comparison. What I would like to do now is I would like to look at how these pieces would fit together, and I hope it's going to come across here what that means. What we've done at TechEd last year, both in Vegas, Bangalore, and in Barcelona, we have introduced functions there, and in the end, what we did was to present an event-driven architecture. What we were doing is there was a change in a business partner. So we were basically, the scenario was like a space agency, and it was about hiring a fitness coach for our astronauts. So once that fitness coach would have been hired, we wanted to inform our team about the skills that the fitness coach had. So in the end, there was the starting event was business partner created in the S4 system. So that event was then wrapped in enterprise messaging. It contained the basic data that you needed to know. I think it was business partner ID and employee ID, if I remember that correctly. It was transported via enterprise messaging, via eventing, to the SAP Cloud platform. There we had a function that we had developed. It was triggered by the event. The function was then started up, or is then started up. The scenario still works. Now there's an additional concept I'm going to introduce. Let's quickly recapture event, because there's a change in the business partner. Event is transported. It contains only very basic data. The function is started up. Now the function can check whether it's interested in the data that is included in the event. It can be like, yes, I'm interested, or it could be like, no, I don't care. If it is interested, what it does, it's going to do an API call and going to call the S4HANA backend to get additional data. That's the idea. The idea behind here is that events are very small, because you will flood the consumers with the events. If you think about that, there will be lots of changes in the S4 system. If these events would be big, that would be a huge amount of data. So now those are really small. And if you're interested, you're going to call an API to get the details. The advantage there as well is there's a security check here. So basically, you can only get additional data if you have access to the S4HANA system. So the authorization and authentication checks here kick in. And then the function gets additional data from the S4HANA system. Oh, that was one too far. So additional data from the S4HANA, which in that case was the name. And then it would first of all check whether the employee has said, yes, you're allowed to share my data with my new team members. So we were checking for the employee's consent in the Cloud Platform consent repository. And on top of that, we were receiving skills for that employee in SuccessFactors skills. This shows one of the concepts behind here of a function. The function acts as glue. So it's basically gluing all of that together, collecting the information, collecting the data, writing that into Slack. So that was basically the concept there. You can see it here again in detail. So S/4HANA Cloud System. Scott, questions?
No, so far so good. So far so good. We just had one qualification question, which I don't know if it was answered in the Q&A, but I was just watching the group chat, and somebody was saying, so just to qualify, when you have these triggers that you mentioned before, you have a trigger, and then when a queue gets it, the queue is getting the event based on a subscription to a topic, just to clarify that, right?
Yes, that is right. We will see that later on in detail, how to do that. We can actually see that in the S4 system as well. I'm going to show that if we have sufficient time, I'm going to show that in an S4 system. So here, let's quickly go over S4HANA Cloud, function starting up, collecting all that information, writing this via open connectors into a Slack channel. So that's the idea. Good. So now, what does an event look like?
Just one little point, though.
Yes.
So back on that previous slide, I mean, for those people that are on the phone and watching today, they've probably heard of, if they've been playing with ECC for a while, a lot of customers are still using ECC, this whole notion of business partner create, that has always been an event that, well, I chose to consider it as an event as part of the ECC infrastructure that was part of the business object repository. And we had a lot of objects in there with a lot of events. And I think what we're saying now is, yeah, some of those are still there for sure. But now what we've done is we've now attached the ability to expose some of those events directly to the enterprise messaging system. So people that are using Cloud Platform will be able to build these extensions super easily by just activating the event and doing their thing on Cloud Platform with functions and queues and things like that.
Yeah, let's be very specific here. We're talking about different event sources. I will show that on the next slide, I think. Mm-hmm. We are reusing some of the older concepts that had been there, and we're wrapping that and using it with this eventing concept. So Perfect. That's the bottom line there. Quickly, without going into too many details here, events are described in a standard format. So we're working there with Google, with Microsoft, with a number of other companies and partners at cloudevents.org. Cloud Events is a specification for describing event data in a common way. So the idea is that over time, you could consume events from a Google system or a Microsoft system and so on, and you could exchange that. In the end, a cloud event has context and a data section. As said, typically we try to keep the payload small, but that can be adjusted to specific use cases. I've seen use cases where the payload was a little bit bigger. Bottom line is there will be a common concept, a common specification in place so that you can really integrate across vendors there and needless to say across different SAP solutions there.
Right.
And talking about SAP solutions, all of that is only worth it if you have events and if you can browse events. So first of all, the supported SAP events will be available in the SAP API Business Hub. So you will be able to browse these. Before there was a Q2 on this slide, so I assume that still holds valid. Nevertheless, you will find those events there and will be able to browse. And there are selected sources that you can use. Today we're going to show S4HANA. So that is for us the most straightforward case there. And C4HANA, there the SAP development teams are responsible for creating the event enablement. So you will be able to browse what's there and reuse that. On top of that, C4 Cloud for Customer right there. There you can enable the eventing for business objects yourselves. The same holds true for SuccessFactors, and in respect to SuccessFactors, there's a really nice blog out there that explains in detail how to do that. Bottom line here is, bottom line, there will be more and more events coming. Still, we're at the beginning there. Let's be realistic. So are other vendors whose events you could use, but this is going to turn into a huge ecosystem at some point in time.
Makes sense.
Then let's quickly look at what I'm going to show you in a minute. What you see in the middle here is enterprise messaging. Actually, the yellow drawing I did was a little bit too short, so it should go all the way down to the S/4HANA Cloud as well. So you see the different backend systems here. You see the connection between enterprise messaging and S/4HANA using MQTT as a protocol, actually WebSocket there. You see the client application using AMQP. So that basically is like an end-to-end setup of enterprise messaging with S/4HANA Cloud and S/4HANA on-prem there. Later on, I will show you how to set up or connect an S/4HANA Cloud system to enterprise messaging. It's possible for on-prem as well, obviously. The steps are slightly different. But that basically is the setup here. Yeah. And now let's see what you would have to do this.
1809, right? S4 1809, just to be very specific, so I don't get a bunch of emails after this saying, Scott, can I do it with 1709? It's 1809 and forward, right?
Yep. So
okay.
It's okay. So let's quickly look at this setup. And let's start at the bottom so that you can see this end to end. So on the left-hand side, there's the S/4HANA system, S/4HANA Cloud to be specific. You have this business object. Let's assume that's the business partner again. Now, what do you have to do on the S/4HANA system? Well, first of all, you need to create a communication system and user. Second of all, you then have to create a communication arrangement. Third of all, you have to create an event channel. We will see that in a minute, what you have to enter, and then I will say a word or two in respect to the details. On the right-hand side, you see SAP Cloud Platform Enterprise Messaging. There, you see a topic, and you see a queue. And all the way to the right, you can see the consumers. So once again, end to end. There's a change in the business object. The event is transported to the event channel. The event channel transport that event to the topic. We have this queue subscription. Remember, this is like a radio listening to everything coming in. And it writes it into the queue so that things don't get lost, so that the consumers can pick it up from the queue. One hint there, the S/4HANA system can only write to topics. This is why we have to have this set up here. So that is basically the end-to-end setup. So in order to set this up in your S/4HANA, what do you have to do? Well, first of all, you have to have the enterprise messaging part here ready. So you need to create the instance of the enterprise messaging. That will give you a service key with client ID, client secrets, and all the passes that you need. Then you go into the S/4HANA, you create a communication system, you can create a communication user, communication arrangement, you maintain the event topics for a channel, and then last but not least there, you need to go for the queue subscription to the event pattern topic. So
right. And some of those would be one-time setups, though, right, Carsten? So in terms of creating some of this connectivity type stuff, that'd be a one-time thing. In terms of setting up the messaging service, that'd be a one-time thing. And then after that, once you have that baseline, activating the different events would be fairly quick, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I will show you that now live, but I got kicked out of one of my systems, so I quickly have to log in again.
So go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead and get that logged in. I'll just say a few words here. So on the last session that we did for enterprise messaging, we kind of showed some of that. So for anybody that wants to try some of this, for sure you can go watch that, part one of the enterprise messaging. And then number two, when you're logging in, you will definitely see that the enterprise messaging service is currently available on the Cloud Foundry environment, and there's a couple of blogs out there to tell you how to do it. I think Tobias might have had his hand in creating one of those blogs, but there's some blogs out there, and he's been answering some questions online, number one. And I also want to mention that the functions part is currently in beta. So we have enterprise messaging, GA, and then we have the functions part that's currently in beta, but still both of those are out there, and you can play with both, and you can play with both together to give that a shot. And then, as Carson was mentioning, the service keys is probably one of the most crucial parts, because you create the enterprise messaging service, you activate it basically, and then you got to create a service key. And then once you create the service keys, you use those as the user ID and password, basically, even though it's called a secret and a token and blah, blah, blah. But so you're going to grab those and you'll use those to make the connectivity between your clients and the messaging system. So in this case, the way that I think of it, S4 is going to operate as a client to the messaging system. So it's going to create a message, pass it over, and then we can consume it whatever way we want. Did you get back in, Karsten?
Yes, now I actually would like to start my screen.
Okay.
So let me quickly do that so that you can see things live. Scott, let me just know. Okay, we're ready to go. Good. What I would like to start with is a blog that is going to walk you through all of that much better than I could. It's by a guy called Pradeep Panda, so I'm sure you can remember that well. It really walks you through all the steps that you have to do to set up things. He links you to a blog he had written before as well, where you can where he walks you through setting up the messaging instance there, and here you can see the different areas, communication users, all of that. So that said, let's look at the communication system in S4 right there. That is the first thing we need to set up. So communication system first. During that setup, typically you would set up the communication users as well. And then in a next step, communication arrangement. So you can already see what you need to enter. System ID, system name, obviously. You need a host name. You're going to get that out of the service key. There are the authentication, the OAuth settings that you need to add there once again. That comes out of the service key. And this is already a pre-maintained communication system, so I'm just walking you through here. I'm not going to go through the creation process there. We do need a user for inbound communication. We do need a user for the outbound communication. Inbound meaning towards the S4. Outbound, this is where the messages are gonna go. That's the outbound communication. And in the next step, it would then be the communication arrangement. So this communication system basically is a system you want to connect, and then we have to define the communication arrangement there. What you see here is the communication scenario ID. So if we would create this communication arrangement, there's basically a template that SAP provides that you have to fill. So you go to this communication arrangement right here, and a lot of those fields are already going to be pre-filled. The information is going to be taken over automatically. So you see the communication system that you would have created. There is the communication channel, the event channel there. There's a description for that. Topic space that is typically holding the originating system, meaning the systems from where the events are going to be broadcast. Quality of service is an enterprise messaging term. In this case, there are different quality of services there, 0 to 2. In this case, the quality of service here means that it's going to be delivered at least once, meaning you're going to certainly receive the event. Whoever is going to be subscribed. There's a reconnection time and so on. Inbound communication, outbound communication, you had maintained that in the system. So it's going to be automatically taken over. And then the delivery of the events, you can see it's going to be done using MQTT. You had seen that in the overview a few minutes ago. And then there's the service URL. So this is basically the data that you have to fill. Then
Just to Carson, just because we talked about it yesterday. So this morning, a few minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, we talked about the topics in the queue. So just to let people know on the phone, this topic space, which is referred to as S4, is not the topic that is on the enterprise messaging system. That's an area that's reserved on the S4 side, not the topic that we will publish and use on the enterprise messaging side.
Actually, yes and no. Let's quickly move to, you're right, it's not the topic we're maintaining on the enterprise messaging side. There is a connection though. Okay. So let's quickly move home here. And what I would like to do is I would like to go into the implementation cockpit, go to manage your solution. Yes, I do.
A lot of transactions.
Let's see. I'm going to find the right one here. So we are now going to go to configure the event channel, actually. So what we said earlier is that there's an event happening on the S4 side, and it's going to flood all the subscribed consumers, or at least the enterprise messaging there. Do you really want that? Do you want everybody to receive every single event that's happening in your system? No, you don't want that. First of all, it's going to be a lot of data. Second of all, from a security perspective, it's not the best idea. And this is typically something that you always hear from customers like, oh, all the events are going to go out. And the answer is no, because you can maintain which events are really going to go out or not. You can have different channels, different event channels on your systems for your different needs. We are now going to look into one. This is an event channel we have created that is basically a connection there to the enterprise messaging, and we can now define which events are going to go out into the enterprise messaging, or are going to be broadcasted to the enterprise messaging side. And you do that using this topic filter. By default, there's nothing in there. So it's empty. You specifically have to add events that you would like to share. An event is mapped one-on-one to a topic. So this topic here represents an event in a business object, meaning all the business partners here, except for that it's a filter. So this asterisk means all events for the BO business partner will be broadcasted.
Right. So this topic space looks like it's a way for us to categorize and manage the different events that we're choosing to publish.
Exactly. So in the end, with this topic space, you have basically a tree. It's like a file structure, so that you can organize your events right there. And let me just create a new entry here. That will show you one more thing. So what I'm doing now is I would be adding another topic here, meaning another event. And if I can move this over, you would see what's there. These are the events mapped one-to-one to a topic. So these are really the topics that are mapped to an event. That way around, it's really true. That I could now add to this channel, and that would then be broadcasted. So I could now click on here, would say, yes, I want it in there. And it's going to be, if I save that, it's going to be in my channel. So
right.
that's
so just to be clear, Karsten, the name that we're now seeing across that's been put in there, that will be the actual topic, right? That we see there?
Exactly. Okay. I can quickly show you one thing, and I'm not sure whether Scott has seen that yet. So now what we're doing here is we are in the events administration part, and we can specifically see, that is the enterprise messaging side, what events are available on the enterprise messaging side here. So you see S4 BO product changed. The one that we used before, S4, that's the system it's originating from. BO business partner changed. So you can specifically see what events are there in that channel.
Wow.
Now
awesome.
let's do one more. Yeah, that's really great. So now let's
I'm
go
impressed.
for.
I don't know if anybody else is impressed, but I'm super impressed, Carson, because this gives customers the ability to 100% decouple their S4 system using events. You have this, and you can see, like, I mean, one of the things that comes across to me is that there's now features, configuration. I don't want to use the word hard coded, but I will. But it's hard coded into S4 to say, hey, here's a list of events. Click, activate, and boom! All of a sudden, you're sending events to the bus where you can then pick them off and do whatever you want with it. It's just a really nice way to do that kind of architecture. Love it.
Exactly. And now let's do the next thing. What I'm showing you right now here is the enterprise messaging side again. So here, what I've done is I've created a queue. Garage. There are 12 messages in there. They are in there. They are stored because I have not taken them out. So you can see it's kept there until I pick that up. I won't pick them up, but remember the number 12. I will show you the queue subscription here. Remember, the S4 can just write to topics. So I need to subscribe the queue to the topic. This is what I've done here. So it has subscribed to this topic pattern, basically. Here, the asterisk means it's going to take create, changed, whatever. So it could be, the asterisk could mean it would be an entire tree. It's going to ignore what tree is there. And the plus is exactly one segment of the pattern that is going to be replaced. So this would be, for example, S4 and the changed that we would receive here. Let's quickly go back to the queue. Remember 12 in there. And there's another tool I would like to introduce to you here. That's our internal demo monitor that we use to show what's going on. And now what I would like to do is I would like to go to a business partner in S4. Gonna click on that business partner.
Carson, this is your big moment. This is like the moment where everything comes together.
This is exactly where it all should come together. Now I'm going to add the business partner, and I need to be quick here. I've put garage now, so we can just change this to Scott's garage. And I will now change the search term here, and I will be quick and move over to the demo monitor. And now what you can see is that enterprise messaging, there is the event in there. You can see that the business partner was changed. You can see the cloud events version. You can see the content type. You can actually see the key for the business partner. So this is all we have transported. The event is very, very small here. And what you can see on top of here, and this is more because it's our demo system and we haven't connected it really, we have a function that starts up on the business partner. And that function has taken the search term Scott's Garage that we have just updated. So what you have seen is we did a change in S4 to the business partner. Enterprise messaging has transported the event that had been raised in the S4 system, and based on that has started up a function.
Yeah, this is really quite interesting, Carsten. So number one, well done. It's an end-to-end scenario from S4, but I just want to clarify a couple of things. So number one, a customer that has S4 on-premise activates an event, and just so we're 100% clear what just happened there, you did some configuration, you activated the event for the business partner, and as soon as you made that change, within less than a second, we see this event monitor, which is, on a SAP Cloud platform on the public internet. Within less than a second, it's there. And this is really interesting to me because when I was playing around with the enterprise messaging in our first session, what I noticed is that I was consistently getting between 1,600 and 2,000 messages processed per second, which is a lot of messages to be processed. And that's just, we just did one here, but nonetheless, it's a high volume. And that was only on my laptop, from my home office, which is not exactly the best internet connection in the world. So that's pretty cool. Well done. It
is. So let's continue from here. I just want to share one slide with you. I'll be quick here and then hand over to Scott. These are different use cases we were seeing. I will ignore the basic one. the one that I had shown you before is the glue scenario, because that's a scenario you see quite often. It's basically an event happening in a backend system, and then the function is started up. It collects information from different backend systems, databases, I don't know what, and then writes all of that either into a service or into the backend. So it's basically the function on the cloud platform being the glue, collecting that all the information, working with services on the internet, with other like object stores and so on, and putting all of that together. The second one we've seen quite often is like a data cache setup, and this is really to just give you ideas. There's a front end that you would like to decouple to a certain extent from the back end. So what we had done is we had used eventing, meaning enterprise messaging, a function that starts up. We had used some kind of data storage here with the backend as a service system, and the front end was going for certain business object against this could be mobile front end or desktop against backend as a service, getting this cached data basically, so that the number of accesses to the backend had been limited. And now, and this is the moment in which I'm going to hand over to Scott. There's this app-driven glue, I've called it, use case that Scott has gone for. He's going to implement an application right there. That application raises an event. The red arrows actually are the events. It's going to start up a function. The application can continue working. It's asynchronous. The function does all the work for the application, and once that's done, updates the backend. The backend's going to throw another event, informs the application that the work is done. And then Scott's application can start working, can continue working. And actually, these are the spots in which events occur. And with that, on to Scott.
So, Carsten, I told you were going to go long.
Yes, I knew. But that was because of your question.
No, it's all good. So we're going to try to get through this really, really quick. So what I want to do right away is I'm going to share my screen and get people to try the app, and then we will go from there. So for everybody, you see my screen now, Carsten?
I think now I do.
Okay. So for people that are on the phone, here's what I want you to try. There's a URL you can type in, bit.ly/safety incident, all uppercase with a dash in between. So bit.ly/safety uppercase dash incident. And when you do that, you should be prompted with a really small application that we branded for Sapphire now. And when you hit this Get Started button, there's a list of 2-line items. So it'll be interesting to see who the first 1 or 2 people in here to create an incident will be. But when you hit this Create New Incident button at the bottom, there is a small UI5 application that you can use to create a safety incident. And so I'll let you fill this out. But a couple of things here at the bottom, which is the interesting piece I've been working on lately. One, if you just leave it as synchronous, it'll do an immediate update. It uses the traditional pattern of a UI5 application, invoking OData services, and in this case, ones that were generated by the CAP model, which we'll talk about late summer or early fall, number one. But if you flip it to async, fill out the screen, and then hit create, there's a couple of things at play here. One, it's going to use the messaging service, which is the result of this application calling the REST service. So I'd like you to try that, number one, because you can see here now I've got 2 queues that are at play. But when you fill this out, notice one of the things here is a skills required. So in the scenario that we have, just to pop back, I'm hoping that somebody will try that app. Oh, we've got a couple in there already, which is great. I have problems with my PC. That's awesome. So let's get a few more in there. And then when you look at this, stop the screen share. When we look at this scenario, what I tried to do with the architecture is that when the message comes in, if a required skill is like networking, within the function as a service here, it calls out to SuccessFactors. It validates the skill, whether or not it's available with that particular person, which is me, because I'm the only person you can assign the message to. And then if the skill is there, it augments the message, changes the payload, and then does the insert into the CAP application, and it's all done asynchronous. And so the part that I'm currently missing is the listener within the application, so that when a successful insert gets done into the CAP application, I get notified. But still, it's been changed. It works, I think, pretty well. You can flip it to async, have some messages go through, and then the last part of the puzzle, which we won't cover today, there's just not enough time, but within the Web IDE now, you can create functions. So you can do it with VS Code, with Notepad if you want, but now there's a template inside Web IDE. So when you're finished writing your function, and of course, in my case, there's just a couple of print statements, but when you're finished writing it, you can just do a deploy, and you deploy it out. And then when you deploy it out, if I pop over to the functions area, you'll see it appear here. And so then this is where your function appears with the code that's inside. And so when you run through the template within the Web IDE, one of the gentlemen was asking in the chat, how does it kind of get activated? It'll ask you, like, how does this trigger? What triggers the function? And you can specify event, and then that gets embedded into the function there. So I think we're just out of time here. So in the future sessions, we'll be covering CAP. We'll be covering function as a service, because we just couldn't fit it all in today. As you can see, the session was pretty loaded already. But then, Carsten, you want to have a few words? We'll just do one little poll here. If you want to schedule a one-on-one, we don't come after you, as you know. We just do these sessions as enablement focus. But if you like what you heard today and you want to go deeper on the topic, have myself or Carsten hop on the phone with you, discuss it further, no problem. But without further ado, we have this wrap-up slide here for Mr. Strothman. Go ahead, Carsten. You got 1 minute.
1 minute. Wow, that's a challenge. Actually, there are a few words I want to say here, and I'm sure I'm not gonna do that in 1 minute. First of all, I know it's not absolutely perfect. It is a start. It's usable right now. Enterprise messaging is GA, so you can try that out immediately. You can immediately use it in live scenarios, in real customer scenarios. Functions currently is better, so you can try that out. It is not GA yet. So play around with it. It is not GA. It is going to come. All of those pieces you have seen, you can put together. What our plan is to facilitate things as much as possible. So we have just come up and actually announced that at Sapphire with a concept named the Cloud Platform Extension Factory. Check that out. It's supposed to simplify development of extensions and the operation of extensions in the cloud. So it's more than enterprise messaging. It's more than functions. It includes CAP and I don't know what on top. So it's a concept. And on top of that, you have the extension foundation, meaning it's not only recommendations and words. It's really software that this builds on. And it's going to make extending S4, C4, Cloud for Customer, SuccessFactors a lot easier. And the idea is to have this extensibility framework for configuration and extensibility. The idea is to have this central catalog to really go in and look at events that you can use, at business services that you can use, and to provide you with a lot of development flexibility there, meaning with infrastructure and runtimes like functions, like CAP, and so on. And as said, it has just been announced. And I believe event-driven architectures will be a really, really important area with a lot of use cases that make a lot of sense in the near and even more distant future, because that's a concept that's supposed to stay, and that is going to stay.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Carsten. You're right on time. So first of all, thank you very much for taking the time today to share some of your insight into what's currently happening and what will happen. Just a quick question. I'm assuming you and or Tobias and or some of the other folks from your team will be coming to TechEd. You know, I know it's a few months away, but when we look forward to September, October, for folks that are on the call and say, oh, what a great idea, I'm sure we could meet with you right down there and have a chat about functions and messaging.
Yes,
awesome.
certainly. Yes, certainly. Right. There will certainly be sessions in that area. So you're more than welcome to meet up with us there.
Awesome. Well, listen, everybody that's on the phone, thank you very much for attending the session today. Enjoyed having you. If you have ideas for topics in the fall of the year, because we're basically what we're trying to execute on between now and September is have a customer come on the phone and discuss some of their use cases with SAP Cloud Platform, give you the kind of the do's and the don'ts about how you use Cloud Platform. But aside from that, we do have these other topics out there like the CAP, function as a service. Anyway, so recast, I think, and chatbots. So we got a few that are in line to be discussed. So if you have ideas, tweet me, write me an email, and we'll take care of you. Anyway, everybody, thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, Carson. Over now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.